at everyone that you know that has a job, talk to them and see what they're doing. Being open to finding like a non-traditional way of doing the work you want to do, like whether it's a different title or at a nonprofit versus a media company. Yeah, just being as open as possible and talking to as many people. I mean, you can say networking and that makes it sound less fun, but like, I don't know, just talk to people and ask as many questions as possible, and people really want to help. Even if they're not able to help, people always want to try and put you in touch with everyone that they know.
Yeah, you have to be flexible. That's all there is to it. And I'm so incredibly thankful, and I got so lucky, honestly, that my the position that I have now was open at the time that I was looking, because I took a super big risk going into a really narrow field. But I think for everybody, we've all discovered that like you might not find something you're passionate about right away, and just gotta stick with it, pay the bills. Something better will come along at some point.
I agree, and I would say, for me, even in times where I felt like I was, doing work where either a task or a job where I felt wasn't going to be my career track, but was great experience for the moment because there was something I need to learn in that. And I think that's one thing, finding meaning in your work somehow, regardless of what you're doing. So for me, when I was, working corporate local in the past, and I didn't quite know if that would be my route, I was able to find passion in learning about how politics work, not only in traditional politics, but also looking in corporate and seeing how office politics work and seeing how things get done, how departments work, how teams collaborate, how ideas are shared, how those ideas turn into strategies that end up getting funding and become the next big idea. That translates anywhere. So for me, I think it was an asset to have had that, to go into journalism, because while I love being around a lot of creatives all the time, sometimes I think some of us need to get a handle on ourselves and how we manage ourselves and communicate and learn how to work with people and be emotionally intelligent, because sometimes in this field we can kind of not be to our peril. But I think that it's just about being open to the process, just being flexible.
Kaitlyn, with what you said before about the importance of making connections, how did all of you guys make those first connections that allowed you to break into the industry?
It's been a mix of things. I mean, a lot of it is people that I met during college or people that work with my friends. But then also, specifically trying to get into queer media, it's reading websites every day and then reaching out to people that work for those websites. Working for Auto Child opened a lot of doors because the editors there have been doing this for 10 years and know lots of people. Not being afraid to just randomly email someone. Anytime you can find someone's personal email address, I think that you should use it and just introduce yourself. And maybe they don't respond and they're annoyed and they delete it, but like, they're not going to go on a campaign to keep you from getting a job because you sent them a cold email. And it often does work out. Like, even if they can't give you a job, they can still point you in the right direction or give you a freelance job or something like that. So that's very important.
Also, I found it, and like I hate saying this, but in journalism classes I found it very helpful to tokenize myself as the queer girl, because I have so many professors who to this day, if they find some kind of story that has LGBT in the headline, they send it to me immediately. And I'll be like, Karen, thank you, I don't report on AIDS ever, but like, thank you for thinking of me, you're a sweetheart. Because there are a couple people who remember like, oh yeah, Camille's gay, like, I'll send her this thing. So then, should a job ever end up in that person's inbox and it's LGBT related, they're gonna think of me right off the bat. Even if it's not the perfect job, then like it's good to have that association in somebody's mind. So like pushing all of those stories every single quarter, that actually like worked out because people think of you.
Dovetailing off that, I know the previous panel you mentioned not hating the term personal brand in ways. Though
I know it's important.
Actually, no, I don't view it as much of a brand thing, because I don't like being viewed as a commodity. I think it's dehumanizing in a way. I'm a person, I have emotions, I have feelings, I'm not a bottle of water, right? This sticker is not this bottle of water, it's the quality that's on the inside, right? So I think it's about developing a reputation. And if it's a reputation for having certain subject matter expertise on LGBT issues, or on sports, or on race, or on how many different wigs Wendy Williams goes through every week. Hey, you can position yourself and your knowledge in a lot of different ways that can be helpful to you, but also helpful not in terms of just a job search, but also for me this summer, I've been doing a lot more speaking and commentary, so it's been helpful for me to not approaching people saying job, but also for me, even though I'm networking and trying to find jobs, saying, is there any way I can be helpful to you? To focus on having a reputation, not only about having subject matter expertise, but also about being someone who's interested in building lasting relationships. Because I think that ultimately in this work, that matters a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the question that people want to ask when they hear that you're like looking for a job or something is what's your dream job? What do you want to do? And I think that's a very limited use question, because you can say what your dream job is and it might not exist, or it might change by the time you get to that level. I think it's so much more important to know what you're good at and to be able to tell people, this is what I've done before, this is what I love doing, this is what I'm passionate about, because that's what they're going to remember you for, not like, oh, that's the person who wants to be editor of a magazine someday. Like, that's the person that writes these stories and has done it in these places, and just like know your skills and your talents. And then the flip side of that is that those people have to remember it. People that are in the position to help people that are looking for jobs have to be able to recall, what the person told them when they met.
Sort of similarly, what role, if any, did NLGJA have in helping you guys get to where you are now? I mean, I know for me it was huge. Like, I met a lot of people and sort of gotten a lot of connections and thankfully jobs through people who I know here. And if it didn't have a huge role, like, what could the organization have done to be more supportive to you as you were sort of leaving school and transitioning into the professional world?
I was like not at all part of NLGJA. I was so intimidated by it, as I was by most of the queer organizations at Northwestern, for reasons unrelated to anything important. But so I wish that I had known about it or been brave enough to use it as a resource earlier on, because I feel like it would have been really helpful to me. But yeah, I didn't get the chance to do it just because it wasn't. Like, it was led by you guys, which I knew you guys, but I didn't know how to be like, hey, help me get a job. I was like, hey, let's hang out.
We couldn't. We were still figuring that out.
But like, I wish that it had been, I feel like coming from like a professor or someone, it would have been easier for me to just to listen to someone say, hey, you should get involved with this organization, and you should try to meet people and find a mentor. That would have been a better way to go about it.
Yeah, totally. I think I came to my first convention in Philly a couple of years ago. I was on the student project, and going to that one actually is what made me, I think like what kind of settled like, oh, LGBT journalism is that thing and I want to do it. Meeting so many people who like had done this work for a really long time and who were able to keep up queer topics and queer identity throughout their work. That was really inspiring and impressive to me. So like our chapter was small and mighty for the whole time that Zach and I were there, so we couldn't really do that much. We'd never really engaged a huge block of journalism people or the community at large, and I wish we could have. But just like learning about this organization at the beginning and like realizing there were people who like did the work I want to do, that was super helpful. So I'm very grateful for that.
So last year in Boston was my first NLGJA convention, and as I said earlier, I was in the middle of my first quarter at Medill and was making, being like, Derrick, you're gonna do this as a career. No one playing around, you're doing this as a career, right? So it helped for me to meet people who were either LGBT or who were straight allies who care about, either the issues or making sure that people in their newsrooms reflected more of what the outside world feels like. So it helped for me to know those contacts didn't turn into jobs necessarily. It helped to talk to them about how their day-to-day work goes, to kind of just get a sense of what the possibilities are out there. Because if you don't know what the possibilities are, then you may limit yourself too much. And in that process, that's when I learned that, hey, maybe I can go work at a place that's more newswiring and figure out how to incorporate the work I love doing in that kind of role. Be strategic about it. So I think, yes, the networking helps, but I also think just structurally and just looking at, faces in the room when I was at that conference last year, and what I'm happy about this year is I do see that there is a lot more diverse representation in terms of who's speaking and who is in the room. And I think it'd be great to see that more reflected at other outside events as well as in leadership, because I think that's going to, for a lot of people, as I said earlier, who look and see who's in the room, who's making decisions, who the gatekeepers are. And the more of a sense that there is a variety of perspectives and people feel like implicitly, that institutionally, that they are welcome. And that's one thing I think that NLGJA could be doing more to welcome not only young journalists, but also people who are not your normative mainstream white LNG folks.
The fact that this panel exists, I think, after like all of us being squeaky wheels and like wanting to have some more like college and young people representation, and the fact that we kicked off with like a trans plenary and things like that, I think is all so telling and so important.
Very.
Yeah. Well, the floor has been open this whole time for you guys to ask. But now I'm really gonna like call on you to ask questions because I'm running out of things to ask.
We have about like 15 minutes?
Yes.
So, okay, so you guys have some sort of non-conventional journalism jobs, at least non-traditional, you're not legacy media reporters, right? So do you feel like your J-School experience prepared you for that new environment? Or do you feel, I mean, you're all from Northwestern, so my guess is that your answer is going to be yes.
I totally do. I use all the skills, most of the skills that I learned in journalism school every day. Like, my job is all about interviewing and writing quickly and social media. Not that Northwestern had a strong social media class when we were there, but I mean, everything that I did in J-School, I do working in communication. So I know that like there's separate communications programs and whatnot, but like I found that they merged very, very easily. No regrets.
Yeah, I think the skills that I learned in journalism school are absolutely the best like basis for me being a journalist, regardless of what I cover. Even if I'm not like graduating and going and working for a newspaper right away or something like that.
I would say the same. I think every journalist, regardless of whether or not you're covering, you know, almost exclusively LGBT issues, you need a traditional training, you know, or a way to learn how to do journalism if you can't get that or just don't want to go to J school, but you want to do the work. You know, figuring out ways you can, you know, learn how to do the craft just straight down the middle. But I think in terms of, to answer your question about just the new emerging startups or blogs or publications, are J schools, not only Northwestern or others, really preparing students for how to navigate that? I would probably say, maybe. And I say that because a lot of what's going on right now is being led by people our age. So there are a lot of norms, procedures. You have the fact that legacy publications are legacy for a reason. They've been around and established in well-oiled machines. And a lot of places where we're at, they're in infancy, but are being paid people paying close attention to the work they're doing to see how journalism is going to change. So could our publications be the new legacy ones in 50 years? Who knows? But what we have to make sure we're doing is still taking that traditional training in our new environments, but learning again as we go along and sharing that knowledge with, you know, as alums with our J school, so that way the students who are coming behind us, who are going to come to us and say, I want to work for you, they can understand how they can take and use their education and resources there to translate over seamlessly.
Yeah, I think definitely it's a matter of learning from each other, and you know, coming out of journalism school, if I didn't get what I wanted out of it, it's my responsibility to make sure that the next group of people gets what I wanted to get out of journalism school, because otherwise I'm just condemning thousands of kids a year to like not get a good degree or a useful degree, and that's irresponsible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like I agree. I think that Northwestern provided a really solid foundation, but I also think that the sort of practical experiences that I had through internships and through the JR program were a huge component of what sort of the name of Northwestern was able to get for me, because I got some really great internships, and I think that I learned as much, if not more, in the sort of practical experiences as I did in the classrooms.
Yeah, I also think that just getting that basic practical, like, this is how you report, this is how you write, it helps when people like us are working at those startup publications, because a lot of times the people that start those publications don't have a background in journalism and they know what they want to do, but they don't really know how to do it. So it's important to combine that like passionate idea making with this new publication, along with people that have the actual reporting skills. You know, crowdsource and you can make something amazing.
I apologize if this came up earlier because I was late, but
no worries.
How are what are good ways of for chapters to connect with students? You know, given the lifestyle students lead, extraordinarily busy, difficult to commit to, you know, time-intensive things at times. You know, like, what's a good way to get the attention of students and to involve them at the chapter level?
That did not come up earlier, so I'm glad you asked. I think that a really good thing to do, and this was something that I tried to advocate for when I was at Northwestern, is a mentoring program. Like pair a student with a professional and really like let them do sort of a job shadowing thing or whatever, and really give someone in your, like assign someone in your chapter to a student in one of the nearby student chapters and really have a sort of organic working relationship with them. I think that we didn't have that when we were at Northwestern, but I think that that's something that would have been really useful.
Because that's particularly beneficial to the student.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Also giving like tangible opportunities to actually get involved so we know that they exist. Like if you know of like a freelance hookup where they actually want LGBT content, then like pass those phone numbers on. Some students are looking for pizza money and others are just looking for the bylines, really, and those are really, really important. And it's hard to find on our own, especially when we're like not established and people don't know who we are, don't trust us, so pass those emails on.
I would say that I think both are good points, in terms of tangible opportunities, a mentoring program. These are things that when I was in corporate and in political work, I saw, in a lot of large companies, because race-based affinity groups at these companies are a lot more established, given, the progress the civil rights movement made, they're able to get that. Now, LGBT folks in a lot of places are starting to, create, that in newsrooms and law firms and, large corporations, they're starting to get more funding, be taken more seriously, et cetera. I think a chapter like, in a larger urban NLGJA chapter could maybe look and see what their peer organizations are doing or the corporations are doing in terms of